Recording in progress. Okay, so you will give me a moment right now because I need to, I find out that writing while I'm having this kind of meetings helps me because I think better, more lucidly. I just need to find a pen. Do you have a pen on your end? A pen you can
Oh,
borrow?
I, wait. I have, look what I have.
There's so many. Look at that.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, I doodle all the time when I'm talking, except that I don't have my doodle pad right now. Where's my doodle pad? Oh, yeah, there it is.
okay.
Yeah, I literally have four journals to the left of my on my desk.
You?
Yeah, so whenever I meet with somebody, whether it's online, I always write a little something.
Oh, okay. So we can do this. We can do this both. So, um, so yeah, let's be polite. How are you?
We're always polite. Um,
Exactly. Caring. How
we,
about this?
uh, maybe not crash.
No, caring. Caring.
Okay, caring, yes. We're
Yeah.
always caring. Yeah, we're always
Yes.
caring.
Yes, we are actually. How are
Yeah.
you?
How am I? Hmm, I'm present.
You're present. Okay.
I'm present. I'm in Italy. It's what, 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, 3 or 5. Yes.
And I started my day a few hours ago.
Okay.
Grumpy. A
Grumpy.
little grumpy. But I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. It was really interesting because this morning, the birds were just, they're so festive. How can I not be happy in the morning here? I live in the country, and oh my gosh, the songbirds in the morning are amazing.
But you woke up grumpy
I
now.
woke up grumpy, but it's like, oh, okay, the birds are here. They're trying to tell me something.
So you don't sit with your grumpiness when you wake up, like if you when you have it.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
So you don't. You so I guess the question is when you're going through. Well, I don't want to call it anymore like this, but I'll call it like this because I lack for a better word right now. So when you're going through an unpleasant emotion, you don't sit with it. Do you try to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I recognize that it's thought, right? I mean, I even keep a journal of my moods lately because I'm going through some changes in my life.
Hmm.
And so there's lots of negativity, and I'm thinking, oh, I know who you are. You're the internalized cultural oppressions. You're not me. Ah, you're trying to tell me something at a stage of my life that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing what I'm doing.
so you,
So it's just constant reminders. So once, I mean, I've been keeping journals for years, and this is the first time. I mean, journals, as you know, as per Julia Cameron, is just to dump, right? Just to dump whatever's there in the morning, so you can have a good day the rest of your day. So that's really being with everything that's present.
hmm,
Except that I started a different kind of journal in the past month or so
okay.
called a mood journal. And
Yeah, I
so
want to
I
hear
started,
everything about it.
what's that?
I want to hear everything about it. What is it? How do you do it?
Well, it's based on what's it called? That therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, of which I don't prescribe to 100% because it's just analyzing things with your mind. However, if you can be with it with your whole body, because as you know, I do this somatic practice that I've been doing for years and years, which means, you're just acknowledging and accompanying yourself with whatever shows up. Except that there's something different going on right now with my own life, so I
Uh
needed
huh.
something different. So, of course, when I can't work on my own, I turn toward therapy. Hi. So I decided to try a cognitive behavior therapist, which was always like, "Don't do that." So I decided, oh, I think I'm gonna check this out. So
Yeah.
I did, and I'm just keeping a journal of my moods. And what am I telling myself? Like, where's
Wow.
this? What am I
Mm.
telling myself? Like, obviously, I'm telling myself some stuff. And so, yeah, it's just funny, actually.
But
At
do
the end.
you,
So
so if
I
it's,
do that. Uh,
so no, I'm curious, like, do you have a particular time in the morning when you do this,
as
or
soon as I get up, because that's my worst time of day.
worst? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I love this. Okay. We're opposites because
No,
that's the
it's new.
best for me.
I know, generally for me too, but something's happening in my life and I'm not liking. So it's like, oh man, I'm up here again. So happy. Um, yeah, so actually, it might have always had, I probably has something to do with a dream that I had last night or this morning, I guess, whenever. You don't dream during the night. Yeah, you dream during the night, not during the day.
Doing that. Depends on the phase in which you're at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's either REM or deep sleep. I don't remember what phase, but there are a phase in which
That's right. Yeah,
you dream and then you don't.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so I woke up this morning, just looking at my dream, and it just, of course, I wake up grumpy anyway in the past few months. So it just accumulated. Is that where my head is at? Like, who's that? Who dreams those things?
Yeah, Chiara, your face is priceless when you tell stories. When you talk about yourself and you go like this with your face.
And it's like, who is this person?
I
So,
love it. It's okay. This is a so the reason why I want to record this is
yeah,
because I think that lately, probably always, but particularly lately, I think that with I'm having a lot of interesting conversations during which a lot of interesting stuff,
comes up.
meaning is
Mhm.
generated. Okay. And I think it's cool to um, record it because I think that uh, that it's a good thing that people know that there is a lot of us mm, who are awesome like you and are
And
brave
you.
like you and are capable of being sincere and honest to the point of making difficult choices like you. And so the way I see this is that we like talk for however long we want, like normally, like we would do it normally. So of course, maybe I'll ask you a little bit to repeat some of the things that you told me about your past, about who you were, who you're gonna be. I don't think I want to dwell too much on who you were because it's more interesting about who you are now and who you're about to become, even better.
I think so
Uh,
too.
but of course, like feel free to contradict me or like ask me weird questions or like you would do normal,
Yeah,
because I'm
it's good.
very I don't care, I can talk about anything pretty much, especially with you. I'm like people with you like so okay, so
Oh,
you're going through a difficult change,
yeah.
and this is oh my god, it's very interesting that you say these things because I actually I'm going through this stuff too a little bit.
Mhm.
So the negative Woody Allen, like in your mind, saying,
Yeah,
"What are you doing? You should be doing this other thing instead. And this is you're dreaming. This is useless." I don't know what it tells you. Uh, it tells me that I'm not qualified. It tells me that I'm not good enough. That I'm not ethical enough. Not smart enough.
that's
Creative enough.
yeah, yeah,
That I should give up hope and dreams. Sometimes it gets very nasty. It tells me
yeah.
that I have to give up dreaming. You were talking about dreams, right? And like,
Mhm.
okay, we dream when we sleep, and I think in REM, not sure, but maybe not. anyway, there is a phase in which we dream. But to me,
Absolutely.
dreaming also happens in the day, when
Absolutely.
I envision, when I think about the world that I want to live in, that I want to be in. And so that voice sometimes also like insinuates there and tells me like, what the fuck are you doing, you and your dreams? Like, you're 42. Just like a, okay.
So this is really interesting what you're saying. So, you're 42, and I'm saying I'm 61. What the fuck are you doing, right? So you should be Mother Teresa. You should be, this Gandhi. You should be Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. I don't know, whatever. And I'm thinking, uh, oh, who's that voice? That's complete bullshit. So that's a dream that we've been given when we were born in this so this is what I come up with in the past few months, actually year, more like year. And so I'm going to go back a little bit in time. Actually, in 2001, maybe 2000, in the year 2000, I went to this little island in Scotland called Cumbrae. There's a 13th century monastery. We were in a beautiful little community. So we were together, and so we were looking at Dr. Jenlin's philosophy and the practice of focusing, which is now in the field of psychology at the time, and so which is an interesting combination. Anyhow, so when somebody said, this process, because it's an internal process and you really think about things differently, I feel so authentic. Like, it feels like so authentic. I feel like I'm really coming from a place of authenticity. And then they followed up with a few other things, and I heard myself saying, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. I'm going, what? What is that? What is that? So I'm paying attention. And so what came up for me was there's a distinct difference between who I truly, purely am and these, in, internalized cultural thinking that lives and breathes in me, that has nothing to do with who I truly am as a human being. And from that day forward, I wanted to discover, who the hell is that anyway? Who is the person who is truly not 100%, I don't know, encumbered by her cultural community, my Italian background, living in Canada. I'm not Canadian, I'm not Italian. I'd go to Italy, I'm Canadian. When I'm in Canada, I'm Italian. So who am I?
Yeah, I love this. Can we talk about this a little bit? This is super interesting, actually. So okay, so you're Canadian, but you're first generation. Technically, one should say second generation, because first generation are technically your parents. I learned this somewhere, but anyway, never mind. People say first generation is you, not your parents. Cool. So first generation Italian. Your parents came to Canada when?
My father in 1950, my mother in 59, but they didn't know each other. It's because my father went back to Italy, fell in love with this beautiful woman, and he took her back to Canada in 1959. Yeah.
Okay. And then you grew up in Canada, from southern
Calabria, yeah.
southern family, right?
Yeah.
And so you have many of us, actually, because I have similar issues, but in other ways. You have like this double soul, right? Because you
Yes.
and you want to say something a little bit about this? How was it growing up? What
Well,
happened?
so that's the whole thing. I mean, it's interesting because the values, the Canadian values, if you like, are of freedom. And my parents, having first two girls, or we were three, and we weren't allowed to, engage in the Canadian culture necessarily.
What do you mean by freedom? Can you elaborate? Like, can you
Well, freedom of thought, of making choices. Even as a kid, I had no, my parents just dictated our lives, period. And so, but one of the things they wanted for us is to be the absolute perfect citizens of
Mm,
Canada.
mm,
So we had to be perfect.
mm.
So I'm gonna tie this back actually to, this internalized cultural activity that happens even with immigrants because they want to belong to the country and they want to serve in the country that they're in, or at least the Italians at the time, they felt that way. And so we had to be perfect citizens. So we had to show up in a way that not only make my parents proud, but to be perfect citizens, you just have to do certain things and behave in certain ways. And so,
Like what?
like, so
I'm
they had,
stupid today. Like
ah,
a little more than usual. So like
well,
what?
my parents were very, very strict. So, if we had to, which I broke all their rules. So if I wanted to go to a friend's house that was really next door, I had to ask permission. And then my parents had to check with their parents. And so I did that the first few times, and then I'd just take off, and then I'd get in lots of trouble. So, I mean, my friends did that. There were so many friends on the streets, right? I mean, we lived on a street where there were lots of kids my age, older, younger. I mean, it was just a party every day.
Oh,
So
was it
we,
safe around you? Like
yes,
a nice
absolutely.
touch? Okay.
Yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
you
My
didn't live
parents,
in a big city, did you?
yes, it was a big city.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Montreal. I mean, in
Oh,
comparison,
okay.
it's small, but it's a city. I
Yeah.
lived in Montreal. So, I mean, actually, we lived in a multicultural neighborhood. So, you name the countries, they were there. There were,
Oh,
the Chinese were my neighbors, the Portuguese, the French, of course, the native French, well, not native, but the colonizers of, uh, of, um, of this province anyway, in Canada. And, you know, people of color. It was just amazing to live in such a neighborhood.
so okay. So it was like super international, cross-cultural,
Yeah,
cross-race,
very much.
cross-everything,
Yeah,
safe, and
very
you wanted to hang out with your friends and you couldn't.
couldn't. But anyway, it took them a while because they recognized they couldn't hold me back because I was always fighting with them. So, well, why can't I just go to my neighbor's house? You know them. You know everybody by now because my parents had to know all my friends. So they knew the neighbors. We all knew each other. So it's just a street, little side street, and then we just knew each other. So I ended up understanding, and I was a big voracious, I'd read anything, right? So I understood the movement, because that was the 60s, the 70s. So there was this, peace and love movement, which my father was horrified. So he really thought that I would become a loose woman because of my nature. I was very rebellious at a very young age. So, so I understood from a young age that, what my parents tell me, even what the world tells me, it's just stuff that's made up. I mean, I understood that like very, very young,
How young?
probably around 7. I remember distinctly, actually, like asking myself, why is my father so stupid? Like, why does he think that way? So I didn't say stupid, but I would say mean. Why is he so
Doesn't
mean?
matter. Yeah, okay. Okay.
So what I would do is nobody was there to answer my questions. So I'd go to my room, I'd close my door, and I sit on my bed and wait for answers. And the answers came. And the answers were grand. And then I started thinking I'm crazy because nobody thinks that way. But later on, you end up thinking, how did I get? I mean, I ended up reading these kinds of things in books, right? Like, what happened to my father? And I'd got these downloads, which, later as an adult, I verified them. They were true. Or what's is there a God? There's no such thing as God. Is it true? And if it is a God, what is it? Um, so, my parents had their idea of God, and I started to question it and what is it? And I had my own answers.
Do you think that they were trying to? We'll come back to God because he's an interesting guy to talk about. Mm, but I want to focus on something else. So do you think that they were holding you back because you're a woman? Because they were
Yes, my
in a
father made it very
country?
clear. No,
He
no,
was
my
very
father.
clear about that. Do you
Yes,
have
my father.
male brothers, siblings?
I have one brother.
Was he loose? Could he do anything he wanted?
Um, yes and no. I would say yes. He can go out as he pleased, come home when he pleased. Didn't matter. But my father was super strict on him. My brother had to be perfect. So
Yeah.
that really weighed on him. We all had to be perfect. So actually, part of the thing that it's been my Achilles heel and I was the eldest child, so my mother always used to say to me, "You're the eldest, you have to set an example, you have to be perfect, and here's what perfect is." So so it was easy to rebel because it's just impossible, but it stays with you, it
Yes.
stays with me. And what I recognized, took me years to understand that, I did a lot of things in my life. A Mainly because I wanted to prove that I wasn't I am good enough. That I am good enough. That I'm not this worthless woman. And so I ended up, so to me education was proving that.
Mm.
So I have a lot of education. And the weird thing is that I remember I finished my master's and I said, okay, I'm going to go for my PhD. But something inside me at that point said, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. If you can find a good reason to do a PhD, that's fine. But you can't do it for whatever it is that's driving you these days because it was feeling unhealthy,
Yeah.
right? Just so unhealthy. So I recognized that there's two things that were always at play: the strive to always be perfect, and how much shame it created if I wasn't.
Were they putting you down when you were not perfect, like your
Of
parents?
course.
Were
Of
they?
course. Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah. And so, my belief, the reason why I feel like I'm not that fucked up, pardon my language, oops,
You no 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 please.
is because I
You're
have
not.
this attitude. I always had this disposition of asking questions
Okay.
and getting answers. I mean, I lived a bit of a magical life as a young girl, um, of asking questions, and they came, and so my life became magical, literally.
Mm,
I didn't know where the answers were coming from. I just knew that they did.
mm, I understand. Um, okay. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I grew up in Italy in the south. Um, I also was raised to be perfect,
Mm.
which I ended up becoming, of course, becoming. But uh, but I also was, but I also, I will. I couldn't leave the apartment. I couldn't go play with kids. I was almost locked in
Mm.
because, well, for a number of reasons. The first reason was that kids would bully me down,
Okay.
yeah, because the place where we lived, uh, there was a lot of like poor people around.
Mm.
Nobody was educated, including my parents. But my parents had an idea of what they wanted us, a very clear idea that they wanted for us a better life than the one that they were having.
Mm.
So they were like, okay, we're not educated, but you will be educated. Okay.
Mhm.
But 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 other parents of kids like around us didn't have such views on their children, and so they were educating them differently. And um and this thing, so I was couldn't spend a lot of time. I couldn't go anywhere in this. I cannot play soccer because you play soccer playing with your friends in the street. I couldn't,
Right.
like, I wasn't in the street, so I grew up not being able to play soccer. It's like an American who doesn't eat burgers. It's like who are you? Uh,
Exactly.
and and then also because kids downstairs were speaking Neapolitan.
Oh, right.
They wouldn't speak Italian. So, and Neapolitan, unfortunately, still now is tied to being from a lower class of
Mm.
society. So, better educated people speak Italian, and so since I could not, they were speaking Italian, Neapolitan, and I could not. I was forbidden from speaking
Oh,
Neapolitan.
goodness. Yeah.
I couldn't even interact with them, and so they would bully me because they would think I was stuck up, and so they would say, "Oh, you're not Neapolitan. I was born in Napoli, raised in Napoli, whatever, but you're not Neapolitan. You're Italian,"
Wow.
and they would beat me. So this is how I grew up, basically. So I want to tell you that even with and so these and another number of reasons made my parents basically, I mean, they did it for my health, I suppose, but they sort of locked me in. I couldn't do anything. So my childhood was spent while studying, drawing, reading, watching a lot of cartoons too. This
And you
is
had what? No friends whatsoever.
very
Wow.
little, very little.
Did you have sisters, right, and a brother,
I have a
or no?
sister and a brother. They're older than me. So, but my brother was always studying because he was a musician. He was training to be a musician, to become a musician. So I interacted very little with him.
Mm.
My sister was very, she was very rebellious, but also self-destructive. She was,
Mm.
she was rebelling, but like doing harm to herself.
Wow.
So I was so there was my brother who was this brilliant student, my sister troublemaker and rebelling, and now I understand she was rebelling for good reasons. Then there was
Right.
me, who was even I was even nerdier than my brother. I realized right now, which
Mm.
was quite hard to be, but it was the only way to survive, like live in imagination, basically,
Right. Right. Right.
with the imaginary characters, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. I was reading hundreds of those, um, and then anime, and then I was drawing a lot, and so to some extent, I mean, we faced similar issues, but I was
Yes.
able to rebel and say I could never open. When I became an adult, I took charge, and I was like, I'm done. But as I was a kid, I couldn't rebel against my parents and say, like, I open the door, I leave. Like I wasn't able. I was too pressed down, so to speak. So
Yeah. 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 Actually, that happened more toward when we moved, and I was about 8 years old. My parents bought a house. My father did well for himself, and so did my mother.
nice.
And so they were both they did well for themselves in Canada. So we moved to this. They owned a house, and but before that we were living in an apartment, and we just never went out. Then it was just impossible. And also, what was difficult is that we weren't allowed to speak English or French at home because my parents wanted us to maintain the culture. So on Saturday morning, when I went to first grade, I didn't speak any English or French. And the reason why I went to English school rather than French is because uh, my father signed me up to a French school because he felt that it might be better because there's more French people here and it'd be easier for me. They refused immigrants. The local French school refused the immigrants. So they weren't accepting immigrants. So then he found that there was a brand new English school opening up. They were building. So the English here at the time were more politicized, more about money making, whereas the French Canadians were oppressed by the church. So and they really wanted to keep It's a political reason they kept to themselves, and it's to their detriment. But they woke up at some point. But so we ended up in English school. So I never heard any English. I knew a little bit of French because I'd watch French TV. So I wasn't able to. I mean, it was like so foreign to me, English. It was just so foreign.
This was until
And
you were 6 or 7?
uh, no, I went to school all the rest of my life in English after
I
that.
know, but how old were you when you started with English school?
Cool. I had just turned 6. And so between 6 and 8, we lived in this area where, I mean, I would walk to school. Literally, it was 3 blocks, maybe 4 blocks, and I'd literally walk alone to school. I mean, who does that to their child? It's like my parents, go to school, be home on time. I don't know how to tell the time. Anyway, it's just that crazy. So, but so I didn't rebel. I mean, at 7 years old, I understood that there was some sort of difference within cultures, right? And they're all made up. I mean, I understood that. By the time when we moved at 8 years old, by the time I was 9, then I just knew all the kids in the street, who were in the neighborhoods more or less. Also, my mother is a very social person, so she made it her business that she knows all her friends, all the parents of, the kids I went to school with. And that's when I really started to rebel. After that, it's like she's asking me to do things, and there's certain people she didn't want me to go to over their house because they were uneducated and they didn't care about education. So I wasn't allowed to talk to certain people. So in many ways, like your parents, like
Yes.
don't talk to them. Then you're okay to talk.
Yeah, and the thing is that, okay, I went through this phase where I was pointing fingers and say, you guys messed up, and so on and so forth. But right now, maybe it's age, but I'm a little more balanced because I can see what they were trying to do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Even forbidding me to speak Neapolitan. Okay, like if the thing is, Neapolitan is not perceived as a language, but Neapolitan is perceived as a worsening of Italian, like a deterred corrupted version of Italian, which is not the case. But this is like a colonizing, like a
of course it is
concept, right? Because instead of Neapolitan, if I were to speak French or English, there wouldn't have been any problem because it would have been
more accepted.
Not that accepted. And then just to give an example, I realized I was bilingual. Matter of fact, I grew up bilingual because Italian and Neapolitan. But I realized I was fully bilingual when I was 31 or 32, talking to a professor of mine at Cornell, linguist, with whom I had endless conversations about language, about structure of language, sociolinguistics. Like we talked about a lot of things. And I remember and it was like, oh, Antonio, he asked me at some point, Antonio, like, how is it to grow up as bilingual? And I thought he was referring to English. And I said, well, I didn't learn English until I was 20. He said, no, bilingual, Neapolitan, you speak Neapolitan. I was like, not bilingual. I was like,
oh yeah.
Yes, you are.
That's
so
good.
It took 30 years to get rid of this messed up idea that wouldn't even allow me to see something as close and dear, like a language, as something that was mine and belonged to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting because my parents sent us to Italian school on Saturday mornings to learn the proper Italian and conjugation so that we can also write in Italian.
Okay.
And so my father wasn't keen on that. He didn't care, but my mother really cared. So she signed us up. And so we started to speak less of our dialect, right? And it really bothered my father because who do you think you are? And my mother said, I mean, she'd just get into these huge battles with my father, right? And so that was hard on us because here we are learning how to speak English, French. Now I had to add Italian, which is like four languages, right? When you're 7 years old, it's like it's hell.
Yes, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's hell.
Fully a mess.
So the first 3 years of trying to learn all of this made me feel so inadequate because I had to be perfect. And if I didn't bring good grades home, forget it. I
Oh
mean,
man.
useless. So it's just really hard to live up to their expectations.
Yeah.
Imagine a child speaking four languages.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. My father used to tell me that if he used to tell me, if you want to get along with me, you need to perform well in school. Simple as that.
Wow.
But then again, like when I have this conversation with my mother, she looks at me and she says, "You have 5 degrees. Did it work?
Did it work? Yeah.
What do you say
Yeah.
to me?" And so, because it's very easy to say, you mess me, because I was also held. So just to give an example, like in college,
Mm.
we have this grading system which goes from 18, which is the minimum, to 30 cum laude, which is the maximum grade. You can get 30 or you can get 30 cum laude, which is like 31. Okay, because then you average, and then that cum laude is worth like a point, I think, something like this. So in college, I was I was broke, number one. So I was on scholarships, okay, because I mean I was juggling sometimes three jobs, and then my grades were very high. So I was getting scholarships, and when I was giving an exam, I had like a lot of time, like half the time, I had between 30 and 30 cum laude, okay? But every now and again, I would get a 29, or like a 28, okay? And my mother, when I would call, because every time after an exam, I would call and say, hey, I passed this exam, this is the grade. And my mom, when I would say I got a 30, she would say, what happened to the cum laude?
Oh my goodness.
And when I got like a 29, 38, she would go straight like, so what happened? What did you mess up?
Oh my gosh.
And it got so stressful. Like she wouldn't yell at me, okay, but she would say jokingly, half jokingly, okay, these kind of things. But it got so, like at some point, I remember, I mean, it was hard. You can imagine, like it was hard to get high grades, do different jobs, like so. So I remember at some point talking on the phone with her and go like, if you like, I work 3 jobs, I have 28, 29, but my average is 29.2, 29.3. Like, can you do anything better than this? Like, can't be this, because I'm tired of you. Like, and I said, like, I'm tired of you saying these things. Like, you need to stop. And she was like, but I'm joking. I don't really mean it. And then by the end of it, I told her like, okay, you really made my life horrible sometimes, because it felt like I was never. It's like it's never enough. Even now I feel like this. Okay. But she looked at me and she was like, yeah, but look at you. Like,
you're educated now. You have 65 degrees.
It's like, but so I don't know. So what's your take? I mean, you're a little I mean, I hate this because I torture myself right now. I don't need my mom anymore to tell me that I need to be perfect because
Well,
I do this
yeah,
to myself.
yeah, exactly. I
A
was
little
just going to.
less, but I still do it.
But you
So
know what it is? Do you know why it's difficult to overcome that? I mean, it occurred to me honestly, I think just this year, and we're just like 6 months ago. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't really pay attention to it. So, shame is directly related to the desire to be perfect because, not the desire, because it's not a desire, it's something that's given to us. Shame is not a feeling. Shame has the same, can be equated to trauma. Why? Because it's a feeling in the body. It actually activates like trauma. So so what happens is it literally happens in the brain. So the neocortex, or the prefrontal cortex, gets hijacked when we are in shame, because it's saying there's a danger, so we have to choose. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I actually studied this, in psychology, so I understood all of that, and I thought, oh, well, I don't have any of that. But the reason why we think we don't carry. I mean, I knew that I was carrying some sort of trauma, and I worked on that, and I thought there's something else going on here, and it occurred to me that shame has the same physical reactions like trauma. Like, and so this is why I started to record my moods and my thoughts, and I started to see clearly. I became really, really curious, and I clearly saw there's a direct relationship between wanting to be perfect, to achieve the, first of all, it doesn't only come from your parents, the idea of achieving. It comes from our culture. There's nothing wrong with it unless we start to oppress people. So it becomes an oppression. Even just take money, for example, or what is success? We all believe that having lots of money is directly related to power. And you're saying, well, yeah, obviously, Chiara, it is. Like, you can't get away from that. While that might be true, I don't have to buy into that. I don't have to go out and hoard money. I don't have to fall prey to this idea that power equals money. I have just as much power as anybody else, unless I think otherwise. Unless I believe otherwise. Anybody could make just as much difference as anybody else with money or no money. And I believe that. I mean, when I was younger, I felt like I had to perform. I had to be, senior VP. And I did. I achieved all those things, and I wanted all the money in the big house. Once I got that, I didn't feel any better. I wasn't happier. In fact, quite the contrary. I felt like I was being manipulated into things that I don't even need or want.
But listen, can I push back a little bit? Like, not push back, but like, okay, like,
yeah, challenge me. Go for it.
You? Because okay, like this need to do well, to be the first, to crush it, to kill it. Mm-hmm. I can say that a lot of it comes from the education that I received, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
The reason why I received this education is because the idea was you have to do better than us because us sucks and we don't want this for you. So like, so there is what you would call some sort of external driver that mm-hmm. like push me. But Chiara, I like to win too.
We all have
when I scored like in college, they did not push me towards any direction. I was free to pick any subject I wanted. My father wanted me to become an electrical engineer. I said no, I want to become a philosopher. My father was like, whatever, like do it. Okay. So it's not that they were as strict to say, no, you either a doctor or a, no, they were like, anything you want to do, kill it. So this was now I mean, through therapy, thinking a lot of other stuff, I realized that it's true that there is like an external part, but I'm also an individual who likes to do things well because I'm conscientious, because if I nail it when I'm studying or when I'm writing or when I'm learning, it gives me an inordinate amount of pleasure too. And it's not just the fact that I'm satisfying someone, because when I'm nailing a paper before, like I was nailing a paper or I was nailing an exam, it was like the experience of learning was fantastic, and it never.
That's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a
So do
question.
you? Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I just want to, I wanted to try to make a point about that. So I have the same thing, by the way. It's part of being human is to create. We love creating. We love achieving something just like our imagination wants it. That's innate in us.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you a question before I go on further in saying what philosophizing,
Mm-hmm.
and just go into your direct experience of. So when you score high or when you do things really well, it's a satisfaction. You put it out into the world and you don't get the same feedback. What happens to you? How do you feel?
I don't. It depends, Chiara. I don't care this much, to be honest, because with my because I studied philosophy, which means that a really good professor who sells a lot of books in the philosophy department sells 300 copies, 400. So you're not. So the idea of being broadcasted out there and have a lot of positive feedback from the others, you already know that it's not going to happen. So in my case,
You created something most recently with a group of people, and you participated in a contest, if you like. I seem to remember you didn't get a lot of feedback or something, right? On that.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I seem to remember that you said I didn't get a lot of feedback on that.
No, I didn't get to the final.
Oh, you did get to the final. Okay, so let's go there. You didn't get a lot of feedback, but you didn't get into the final. So how did it make you feel? What happened?
How did it make me feel?
Be honest.
Chiara, okay, I got an honorable mention. And yeah, I mean, I was a little bit upset, but I was not crazy upset because it was my first attempt with designing with battling with something that I've never done before. So, and I knew that the quality of the product was high because I liked what I was doing, which is something that like when I'm doing something, I'm very severe when I'm reading my things, okay? And by the time I was done with this thing, I was really happy with how it came out. And so yes, when I thought these bitches didn't send me to the final, I was pissed off, but it was superficial. It didn't get skin deep to the bone.
Yeah. It didn't crush you.
No,
Yeah.
I was
That's
like,
awesome.
okay, like I actually had a conversation with my therapist about it. I was like, these idiots didn't understand what I wrote. Like I flipped it. So maybe it's because I'm a little megalomaniac, and I'm like, okay, if I don't ace it, it's not on me, it's on you who don't understand. Maybe it's like maybe I have a psychological issue in this regard. But with respect to this thing, I wasn't really upset. I was like, yeah, like, so do you see what I mean?
Yeah, so here I want to make a distinction between, so it's really wonderful that you weren't able, you didn't sort of, go into a depression. Why me? I don't know why I'm continuing. I hate this. So, and this happens often. We're going to take celebrities who are often on stage, especially rock singers or any musician who makes it really big, and then for some reason they don't feel good when they're alone. We know those stories. We've heard them a million times. Unless they get those accolades or the feedback of validation, they don't feel good about who they are. And unfortunately, that happens to be common. And I know you've done a lot of work on yourself, and you're very self-reflective. You've come to that point in your life where, like, yeah, this makes me feel shitty. Maybe they didn't understand what I was trying to say. That's fine. I'm going to move on. That doesn't stop you from doing more of what you want to do. It's not stopping you at all. So there is a distinction between really falling prey to the incapacity of really having some sort of self-regard and saying, okay, whatever. You could have said many things. You said what you said. I say sometimes, all right, well, I made a mistake, I'll move on. But I wasn't like that in the past. I made a mistake, I'm a horrible person. Like I'd go there very quickly. I'd go there so fast that it'd take me days to come out of it, to remember that it's like this has nothing to do with me. So the shame and perfection. So I have it very deeply. It's like it drives me to the brink of it stops my creativity to the point where it's creativity. So when I engage myself, I think part of the Italian culture is what I've recognized. There is this desire to create everything practical and beautiful. That's what I've noticed. I mean, just being in Canada, and it just drives me crazy when, okay, so you're building a house, why are you making it ugly? Like it costs the same thing, make it beautiful. That kind of thing. And so I've noticed that part of the and that requires an essence of focus and perception of getting it right, but it comes from a place of love and joy and happiness, because we all want to be happy at the end of the day. And for me, when I do create anything, I follow that, that this imagination of mine that I want it to go somewhere, and I want it to shape it a particular way. And I don't stop until I get to wherever I want to do. Sometimes it's just have to let go, and it's going to be good enough. I learned how to do the good enough, but that was always very hard, because then something would take over me. It's not perfect. And so that's when the shame would kick in, and that would kill me. So I did that for years until I recognized, being part of, what does it mean to feel good about yourself? So I did fall prey for the prestigious thing, having university degrees and having positions in organizations. A leader, to me, being at the head of something meant something. And I got there at a very, very early age, only to recognize it's not what I want to do. But
do you want to say something a little bit about this, like about your trajectory, which is super interesting? Yeah. No, come on, of course it's super interesting. Come on, Chiara. Like people.
Well, I don't know. It's super interesting to you. It's not that interesting to me.
It's very admirable and objectively. How about this?
Yeah, I get,
And I could tell you this for in many like for, I could give you like precise arguments for this, but we don't want that
we
because you're
won't go
going to
there.
get bored. Okay, but could you say something a little bit about this? So you finish your degree in
Well, I focused on two areas: psychology and organizational development.
okay, then what?
And but I was in and out of school because I supported myself. I left my house. I left at 20, and so I've been supporting myself at 20. Yeah, so I had to
Fucking
work.
hard.
I worked. I maintained a house, but by the time I was 26, I bought my own house, so I was doing well. Um, so and I was ambitious, but things had to be fun for me. And curiosity drove me to get things right. And so I guess the people that I worked with in organizations, here's this young girl who seems to be really smart and understands everything and has opinions and ideas. So I was quickly promoted in organizations. And next thing you know, I'm in senior management with a bunch of men. And I
What kind of
thought, oh,
space? What kind of space? Like
um, you mean
finance?
No, it wasn't finance. It was actually in the fashion industry. I worked for the biggest fashion houses in North America. So it was fun for me because I ended up traveling. I was a buyer, so I bought millions and millions of meters of fabric, and so to
Wow,
me it was a commodity. What's that?
it's fascinating. Tell me more.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. No, true. So you were
it was.
traveling across the world to buy fabric
Yeah,
or
yeah. Yeah, and also I started off as a fashion merchandiser, if you like, part of a designing team. We had a think tank, so I was mentored by many people because they saw something in me. So, and I ended up, you know, they would give me, titles, and I thought, what's this title mean? I was just so naive. In my early 20s, what does this title do anyway? And I thought, well, I'm interested, but what about the pay? I want the pay that comes with it. So I'd fight for the pay. I didn't care about the title. And so it was funny that way. And so my bosses thought that like, who is this person? First of all, women didn't behave that way. That was like the number one thing. Women just, they say, oh, I'm not going to give you a raise. And they say, okay, and they'd cry. I mean, I might cry too, but not before I gave them a piece of my mind, and then I'd go to the bathroom and cry or something. So, yeah, so I mean, next thing you know, I'm running a whole department and spending lots of money, millions and millions of dollars, like over 50 million at the time, which was in the 90s. And I didn't like the game of power at that point.
how old were you?
Pardon? 29,
So
30.
okay, so you have this like career, then you get to 29, and then what happens?
And in the meantime, I always kept going to school. And I worked for this one of the largest, actually, menswear companies in North America, and we sold to everybody, mainly in the States. And so all designer stuff. And what was interesting about that is, I'm going to be crass, is that I realized that mostly was run by men uh, who had the most senior positions, and I realized, oh, this is a dog pissing contest. So, and I said, I don't even understand what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, I had this thought, this is a dog pissing contest, and never had a dog. I mean, I just knew that dogs mark their territory, right?
Males, not females.
Mm. So these males did that in the organization. I was super young, super naive. I got there because I was competent, but I wasn't in there for the power or game.
Who were
And
you there
so,
for?
what's that?
Who were you there for?
I was there for the joy of actually I did like power, but not to usurp it. Um, I liked it in the sense that I felt that I could bring something new to the department. Um, so I remember my boss saying, "Okay, we're going to get some new computers. I'll get some PCs at the time." I asked for it actually, and I knew Excel already, and I had already been working with computers since the 80s, and I had my own PC. Nobody has, I mean, very few people, certainly not women, didn't do that. I learned a bit of coding, it's just fun. Fun stuff. It was just fun for me. I love learning, right? So I just wanted to know how it works. I even opened computers. But I want to see what does it look like inside and put them back together. But so I recognized, there was a lot, I had a lot of ideas to create something in the department. And one of the things I said to my boss is that, I want people to be more self-sufficient, take responsibility for what they do, which means that we're going to be a team. And he's like, what? What does that mean? And I said, well, that means that I want people to have access to Excel. I want, we can do this on their own. They don't need me to tell them what to do. They can do certain things themselves. He said, they can't do that. And I said, well, we'll learn. We'll learn together. And he said, no, I'm not going to buy you any of those things. I'll buy it for you, but not for anybody else. And I said, well, send them off for training. He says, nope, I'm not giving you any budget for training. I said, no problem. I will teach them myself. And of course, that just became, already he started to feel threatened. There's like a threat there. And I'm just doing it because I work better as a team. And I had a bunch of people working for me. So I did train them, and people were scared that they were going to be fired because people are not stupid. That's exactly what my boss wanted me to do. He wanted me to hire younger people who can, come straight out of school and they can do all that stuff and without them training. And I said, the company is rich. Who cares? And I said, and besides, I am not going to fire that one, and that one. They have families. I'm not doing that. So he didn't like my attitude. I didn't like it at all. But it just, I realized that when I was younger, all I wanted to be was a psychologist to help people feel good about themselves and to see themselves. That's all I ever wanted to do. So I quit. And I became a consultant. And that's what I've done ever since. Sort of help people just feel good about themselves and be more intentional, be more, I guess in the philosophical world, it would be more moral, morally inclined, to be more aware of themselves. Mm.
Field aware.
Yeah, so that took me on a journey. That took me on an amazing journey, and that's when I started studying psychology, and I didn't like what was going on in the schools. It was too stark, so I found a professor at the University of Chicago who was doing some amazing work. He had already won some awards from the American Psychology Association. And his work has been amazing. It's influenced people in the field of trauma immensely over the years. He died a number of years ago, but I came across him as he left his professorship. So I'd go to New York. He'd have groups, and I learned with him, and he had trainers. I learned with them. I became certified. Yeah, and so I wanted to be more intentional. And that's when it occurred to me that it's not necessarily true that we're only influenced by culture. We are until we wake up from it. That's what I'm trying to say earlier. We are influenced by our cultures until we wake up from it.
Yeah, but when you wake up from it, you don't stop hearing it, do you?
No, you don't. So that's the struggle. That's where I struggled a lot from. But, it's like I chose a life to live very, I chose to live a life that's very simple. That means that I no longer go after the money. And I've realized that you can do whatever you want, even with very little money. You can live in a fabulous neighborhood. You can live anywhere. You can find places that you can afford. So, I mean, I would never go back to, I wouldn't, just because I have a small budget doesn't mean that I can't live in where I want to live. So
Do
I
you
live in an amazing neighborhood. I live in the country now because I did move to the country. I live at the foothill of a ski mountain. Um, there's this, I live in an apartment that used to be condos, and it's like renovated. It's beautiful. I don't pay that much, and I live an amazing life. I live in the country, but it's just amazing what's around me. There's so much beauty.
do you do you miss that kind of edge that you had when you were on top? Do you
Not at all. No,
like
that's
nothing?
no.
Glamour, spending $5,000 on a purse. I bet you've done this at some point because I have
I've
friends.
looked at- Well,
I
I
mean, not
always
that. I mean, I would do it if I could. So I presume that people who can do it at some
no,
point.
I think that I would never do that. It's not something that to me that wasn't part of who I was. I could never do that. But being in the fashion industry, I had
Oh,
access to those $5,000 purses for $50,
okay, cool. But anyway, like blowing money like this without any.
Yeah, I've gone to Paris because, for 5 days or whatever, just going. I would do that. Just hop on a plane and go somewhere.
So,
Uh,
so
do I miss that? In the beginning, I did. I don't miss it because here's the thing. If I want something, I can still make money. I know how to make money. If I want more money, I can still turn around, and I do.
it's in your hands. It's
Yeah.
not coming from somewhere else. And what was the reaction of those around you when you started to when you
Oh,
found?
well, that's when you realize who your friends are. Literally, most of them, like a few of them said to me, I can't hang out with you because you're waking that up in me, and that's not something I want to walk away from. And there's no way I'm going to leave my husband because that's really what I want to do, and I can't afford. And so I'm like, ew.
Say this again. So people
Literally
look
said to
at
me, they can,
you were they were like, oh my god, I should be do the same. I should be doing the same or something like this. Is this what people?
yeah, and that's not something they wanted to do. They wanted to hang on to that money that they were making and the glamour and all that stuff. So literally, people just, I ended up, I didn't, that's when when you're from who are your friends. Um, so that was hard at the beginning. I can't say that wasn't hard, but I also thought, "Oh, I don't want to even hang out with them either. Even like knowing now what they're revealing, why would I hang out with them? Right? So, um, I
Okay.
also learned to not hang on to people or relationships. There's something much greater in us that is so much more exciting to share with people. I mean, Zoom during the COVID has been amazing, right? I don't have a need to, like, I have a partner right now. If he said to me tomorrow, I'm going to leave you, yeah, I'll be sad for a bit, but I'll be okay. Yeah, it's not something, it's
So
not
you
earth shattering.
so you know where you are, where you stand. You know your place. You don't need people. You just want to be with them, but you don't need them.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly, exactly. I mean, I love being with people, in but not that much. I do. I do need to. I need stimulation. I need. I mean, living in the Western world, we're so used to being entertained that it takes away from the creativity. And I have never been so creative in my life. Because I don't have that much money and I want a piece of furniture, a certain color, I used to get rid of it and buy a new one. Now I re, repair them. I paint them like this. I wanted a white furniture, so I painted all my furniture. I learned how to do that. Or I decorate them differently in ways that I like.
Okay.
So I'm much more creative. Yeah, I mean, I never thought I would say this or even do this. I bake bread now. It's like it's fun.
You also break it and say, "Do this in my memory," like.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I approach bread making in the same thing like you talked about. Oh, I love making it perfect, and I approach bread making in the same way. Oh, because the first time you make bread, it sucks. So,
Oh yeah. Took a
and,
lot of iteration in my case to learn it.
oh,
I haven't made it in a while, but yeah, I remember one day I was in the US, and I I bought a stone, like, which is the same stone that pizza ovens have.
oh yes, yes,
You
yes.
put this stone in the oven, and then you lay the and then I bought I don't know the name in English, but something that you use to scoop things on the um like
Oh yeah, paddle. Like a
what
paddle.
paddle.
A-
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Like a paddle. Yeah, it's like I think it's called a paddle.
Yeah, paddle. Okay. And so this thing was made of aluminum, right? And was very thin layer, and I and I was making bread. That it was the very beginning, and I had worked the dough like for a couple of days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was doing it like because my family taught, like, I come from a family of pizza chef, like
Ah,
second nature for my uncles to do these things. They were making fun of me because I was like, you're a student, like, what are you doing? Anyway, so I remember one of the first iteration I was doing making bread, and I had put a lot of effort into making this dough, and I was putting this thing with the paddle in the oven, and for some reason the the dough got stuck on the paddle, and I like played around a little bit like this to get it unstuck.
that's
So it
all.
did get unstuck, but it fell on the floor in the kitchen. And Chiara, I got so mad, okay, that I took the paddle and I bent it like this.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was furious, but in a literal sense. Like there were probably fire like going through my body or something. So I bent this thing like this. And at the time, my girlfriend saw it. She came to me, and her eyes were like wide open like this. And I was, with my hand like this, because bless you. And I was this thing like this, and I didn't even understand what I had done, but I was just angry. And so she took this thing out of my hand, very gently, put it on on a surface. She said, "You need to come with me now. We need to go sit." She walked me to the sofa. We sat down, and I was silent, and like I had my eyes like, she hugged me, and I had this moment of like coming back. But I don't like, she freaked out, but she was like, but yeah, then it got better. Like I didn't do it anymore. But
Wait, I like this example. I like this example because that example is a reaction, a trauma reaction. So in trauma, there's fight, flight, or freeze,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
So you fought.
Hell yeah.
It's what's that?
Hell yeah.
But there's also a numbness that happened, right?
Yeah.
Like complete numbness. because that's what happens. The adrenaline, there's the it's a whole process that happens in the brain where there's signals that are sent to certain parts of the brain. Your neo or frontal cortex shuts down because it's danger is happening, and it's just like danger time, right? It isn't, but I'm wondering, is it related to this, like, I'm not getting it right?
Oh, back then?
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
hard on
I'm
yourself, right?
talking about maybe 10 years ago, but yeah,
Yeah, no, I
back then
realize it. Yeah. Like you were really hard, you were being hard
I
on yourself.
was really hard, and
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not like that today, but I'm just pointing out how we don't understand how our perfection is ingrained in us to the point where it's directly related to shame, and we don't know when we're in it. When these things happen of that nature, there's no thinking involved. There's zero thinking involved. It's impossible. It's our brain is hijacked. Um, our frontal, cortex is hijacked by the limbic system, which is a process, right, of chains of reactions.
but Chiara, I don't. I mean, you come from Italian culture, but you also come from a culture, like from a family that pushed you to be the best. Now, I can tell you that growing up in Italy, in my, I can only talk about my surrounding, and no, I can talk a little bit more about Italy in general. I can tell you that this push to excellence and perfection is absent. Like people here uh,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I'm just saying.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
if you look at the socioeconomic condition of Italy right now, you realize that we are outliers because normally what people learn is that it doesn't matter how hard you try, because you will never succeed unless somebody hands it over to you, because that's the only way by which you can ever get anything. So the idea that really intense and passionate and dedicated work will ever lead you to crown your dream, and
I understand. I
it's
understand fully.
absent. It's
Oh,
not here, not in Italy.
because that's a caste system. It's an old, old, old. So this is more cultural oppression. It's a kind of a caste system that you know it 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 goes back to generations. I mean, I don't know if you know, but there is such a thing as ancestral trauma, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, oh, wow, the average person can never make it unless somebody hands them over something.
Yeah.
Unless like the Lord gives them a piece of land, you know, right? Unless
Unless their
somebody
parents buy them something, unless
Yeah. Unless you're born into it, forget it, right? And so this is more cultural oppressions. If we believe that, then it's true. Of course it's going to be true. That's what it is. My father had that with him. I don't know where my mother got that, but it's not in her thinking. It was never in her thinking. And I think it's because of how she grew up. She's a young woman. She had two older brothers. One of her oldest brother is a genius, and so um, who loved, and he spoke French, so she knew a little bit of French because there was a big age difference, well, maybe 5 year age difference, but when you're young, that's a difference. So he taught her things, and so she believed that she can do anything, and so for her coming to Canada was amazing because she can do what she wanted in many ways that she couldn't be in Europe or in Italy. So she lost that. My father never lost that thinking. He
And
held her
he
back.
accomplished a lot, though.
What's that?
He accomplished a lot over there, didn't he?
So it's thanks to my mother because my father just it was like a battle all the time. you know.
Oh, so the creative mind in your family was your mother.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. She's you know, today I think she's got these I don't know, her brain is different than most people. She also had this I guess it was commonly known as photographic memory. So she's got this incredible memory. It's amazing. So she's really good with numbers. My father was too, but you know, she's amazing. She's really bright. She's really smart woman. And then in other things, there she's her culture just held her back a lot too. But didn't stop her for certain things. Like her children, she wanted to give things to her children that she never had.
Mm.
Although she was never really missing anything because they had in her house. But so I guess that's the idea of education for her was really important. My uncle was educated. She was pulled out of school because her father left the house for another woman and he just left to go to Argentina. So they ended up like, you know, from a fairly wealthy family to nothing almost.
Okay.
Um, so she had a different upbringing, but and she knew that you could survive things. She wasn't stuck in certain ideologies of the typical Italian, but my father certainly was. So what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that that kind of thinking, it's not what it means to be human. It's just part of the culture. That it doesn't necessarily mean you have to believe it.
No, no, it's
Yeah,
just
you know, or anybody, right? I know you don't, but
that in yeah, I mean I don't, but it's still in me because in especially in southern Italy, southern Italy has been conquered and dominated by many different people over the course of the centuries, and
yeah,
the idea is that our ancestors saw new kings coming up uh, over and over, French, Germans, uh,
yeah,
Arabs. So there was a lot of different stuff, especially in south of Italy,
yeah,
and they were
exactly.
promising change,
Yes,
but change was never arrived, and so we have developed this cynicism with respect to change, because we are like, okay, things change, but don't really and can't really, because it doesn't matter who comes, they always come to take advantage and do these kind of things. So
that's right.
so there is like an historical reason for this.
That's absolutely, there's a good reason for it. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's, and especially in the South. I know the history of the southern part of Italy as well. And um, what I find fascinating is that we forget, right? We don't remember why things are the way they are. So when we start to pay attention to that, that's what makes us, um, we can step into our lives more freely. I think that's what we started this conversation with. I have to go in a few minutes because
Yeah,
I
no
have
worries.
somebody's coming over shortly to work. Uh, so yeah, so this come really brings me full circle in that it's so important to become aware of what is influencing our thinking, our living, our feelings, our sensations, all of it. Most of it doesn't belong to us, and and I'm now calling it internalized cultural oppressions, but but and to watch our moods and to watch where they come from. I keep a journal. I think that's what I started saying because it's stronger than me, and I don't want it for myself. So
Okay.
I'm yeah, and so sometimes I get up like grumpy in the morning.
But it doesn't stop you from blooming back to light and
Yeah, yeah,
after a while.
yeah. I mean, I always have to be doing something. I mean, just the other day, I thought I really should wash my windows, and my partner says, "Yeah, yeah, tomorrow." And I thought, "Nah, I'm gonna wash my windows myself." really, because it was just, I like them clean because it's beautiful outside and it's just green and it's gorgeous. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I listen to a podcast once in a while called Poetry Unbound. Beautiful, beautiful Padraig Otwama, who's who who always narrates a poem, and I love how he delves into the poem. His
Mm.
voice, his Irish voice, is just wonderful. I could listen to him forever. So I put them on, and I'm washing the windows like I'm baking bread. It's just wanting that desire for to make it beautiful, and just cleaning it and listening to that poetry. It created something in me. It just sparked the poet in me, I guess.
How were the classes after this?
Pretty nice, pretty nice. I mean, they were
So
just spot on.
poetry, so so poetry makes cleaning windows like making bread, just good and and lovely. That's
Yeah,
nature.
exactly. Exactly. And it wasn't just the windows, everything else around, and just getting rid of whatever insects that get in in the windows. So that's how I want to live my life. I just don't want to live it saying I don't want to wash windows because I hate it and I don't like listening to that chatter. I mean, God, yeah, that voice is so annoying. So make it perfect, but my way of perfection is
Va bene.
it's
Okay, this is a great. You should go do your things. Go back to
yeah,
whatever you will.
someone coming over in half an hour and I have to prepare some work that we're doing together.
Thank you.
So yeah, and when it comes to money, we can do whatever we want, get it wherever we want. It's yours. You can do that.
Okay.
You have to figure
Oh,
it
well,
out.
I'm writing a note about this. Uh, so thank you so much for your time. Okay, and I'll
Uh,
see you
always
on time.
talk to- Bye.
Ciao.